Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Universal Design for Learning, a Toolkit for Student Success. This presentation is brought to you by NFTA, the New Faculty Teaching Academy, from CEDAL, the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Academic Leadership, here at the University of Central Arkansas. Thank you for being with us today. Whether you are completing this workshop on your own, asynchronously with accountability buddies, or with a partner or small group together, we have opportunities for you to maximize your own learning and practice the tools that you will be adding to your workbench for student success. Thank you for being here. 3 extremely passionate UDL enthusiasts built this toolkit. If you have been a part of NFTA in the fall of 2025, you are very familiar with the incredible support of Olivia Bundrick, one of your co-leaders and experienced faculty. If you are not yet familiar with Amber Wilson, please make sure that you avail yourself of her research resource expertise and that of her colleagues in the UCA library, not just to find materials for your students, but for yourselves as well. I am Leslie Hamilton-Bruewer, and I am a PhD student in the Change Leadership for Equity and Inclusion program, which is how we came together for this project. Olivia and Amber presented the live workshop in November, and I will be your presenter for the asynchronous version. We have pictures of 3 women on this slide, with Olivia on the left, Leslie in the middle, and Amber on the right. Throughout this workshop, we will be modeling some UDL practices, and we'll do our best to highlight them for you as well. When you have visual presentations for your students, accessibility best practices include describing the main points of your images for your audience, not just for learners with visual impairments, but also to alert your students to the information you would like them to take from each. This is one of the ways that universal design, whether for learning or more generally, serves not just the people for whom the design choices are intended, but really everyone. Amber noted that once you start seeing the world through a UD lens, you will see it everywhere, like parents with strollers whose lives are made easier by the accessible push button to open doors originally designed for people using mobility aids. For today's workshop, you will need your guided notes handout, linked in the slides here at bit.ly/4RA9D9A, or use the quick link button on the Toolkit site. There is a space at the bottom of the first page for session notes, and of course, you are always welcome to use your note-taking system of choice. Through the Toolkit site, you can also access the Google Space forum to connect with other participants, share your reflections and resources in established threads, or start a new thread to continue the conversation. Additionally, throughout the workshop recording, you will notice some pauses of varying length. Don't worry, your computer has probably not frozen. We're just allowing you to take the time to reflect that we would give in an in-person workshop. You may always pause the recording itself to take longer if you need for any given reflection. As we jump into the UDL guidelines, we'd like to check in and see where your brains are at. What is one word that you associate with accessibility? Focus in on just one example and reflect on why this might be your connection with accessibility in this moment. This is a metacognitive strategy of previewing or priming. This gets learners ready for the info that you are going to present and helps turn down the background noise from other thoughts. Now take a moment and share your words with your collaborators if applicable. Faculty participants at the live workshop contributed to this word cloud. How does your word fit in here? Equity was the most frequent association. Some other clusters include the qualities of accessible practices, like being transparent, flexible, and understandable, or the practices themselves, like facilitation. Let's take a quick look back at these 3 slides together. The same formatting allows learners to quickly make a neural connection between the material in each without expending too much cognitive effort. Getting materials ready also helped prime learners for the reflection. And while the information could be pulled together into one slide, this pacing allows for targeted focus, provides structure, and eliminates visual and mental clutter. Today's learning objectives are centered around equipping you with the knowledge to apply UDL principles to foster learning agency. In order to accomplish this, you'll need to become familiar with the UDL guidelines so you can identify the principles most relevant to your context, such as the modality or the content of your course, and to learner success. We will then practice applying UDL 3.0 guidelines to an assignment to help you develop some comfort with this process for creating or redesigning your own course content. For this workshop, as with all of your courses, everything will center on learner agency or learner success. In fact, if you ever feel lost or overwhelmed with the vast resources and recommendations for applying UDL, just return back to this core. What do your leaders need to increase their agency and thus their success using this assignment? No one is expecting you to leave today's workshop ready to run your own presentation on UDL guidelines or to overhaul all of your teaching processes. We've pulled specific goals for this session from those learning objectives. These are achievable steps towards a broader mastery of accessibility in education. We'll cover what universal design for learning actually is and why it matters for those on all sides of the learning process. We'll explore examples of UDL principles in our shared context of higher education. And finally, we'll practice applying these tools to situations that connect to your professional lives in hopefully meaningful and authentic ways. UDL increases learner agency by offering multiple options. CAST, the agency behind the guidelines, and much of the research providing empirical evidence for their success, will frequently frame this as designing for multiple means for engagement, representation, and action and expression. CAST will also almost always put these three overarching guidelines in this order, but please note that this does not mean you must also work through them in this order, nor do you need to complete one guideline before exploring another. There may be a principle or a more specific focus under the guidelines that will allow you and your learners to notch a quick win, or you may notice a clear area for growth or for impact within your course. You and your learners will use the tools that are best suited to your context in that moment. UDL is about lowering the barriers, not the bars. Let's take a moment to reflect once again. What is one small teaching change that has made a big impact for you? This can be something that was shared with you that you were able to put into practice, something that you recognized needed to change within your own teaching, or even a shift that impacted you as a learner. Some responses from the faculty in the live workshop include broad strategies for an entire class, like drafting more specific policies or connecting with learners through humor, or things designed for individual support, like one-on-one talks during office hours. How does your teaching change fit into this list? Would it fall most fully under engagement, representation, or action and expression? Including these expanded reflections in your notes will help anchor the content for you across multiple neural pathways. So we've been thinking about learner success and agency throughout the workshop already, but we just want to ask the big question outright. Why even bother to implement UDL? The short answers are that it works and that you can do it. Think back to your word connected to accessibility. Did you picture someone who needs a specific accommodation? This is how accessibility is frequently framed as extra work that people with resources or power do to gift others with something to make their lives a little easier. And if this was your first thought, that's okay. Often the first response we have to something is what we've been socialized to believe. Our, oh, that's not what I really feel thought is the truer reflection of our values. Part of universal design is recognizing the way the world is currently set up and working to create systems that intentionally build in accessibility from the beginning. That accessibility includes measures that support everyone. So we'll be able to move beyond the idea that accessibility is simply meeting the needs of one or a small group of people. UDL is also a flexible framework not a rigid set of rules that must be followed. And very importantly, small, incremental changes are actually going to be more effective than an entire course overhaul. So you can put away the hard hat, the demolition tools, and focus on identifying the most important elements of your class first. This will allow you to be able to sustain these UDL principles and actions and continue them and to continue building on them as you go. So you know that UDL guidelines will increase learner agency and success, will provide support for every member of your programs, and won't exhaust you. But what do we actually mean by engagement, representation, and action and expression? Engagement is the why of learning. How do we make the material exciting for learners? Fostering learner buy-in not only anchors the work for students individually, but it is also the first step towards building a sense of community and belonging in your class. And these matter both for our psychosocial needs and as a backdrop for better student success. As with all things UDL, this comes back to learner agency and things like topic choice. Whenever possible, how can your students control what they're investigating? Note the whenever possible. Sometimes they may have free rein to explore any topic they like because the process is the important element. At other times, they may be able to choose where they focus their attention from a broad shared topic, and at still others, they may be limited to one specific idea. Topic choice is not the same as a free-for-all, and learners who feel a strong sense of agency will be able to access that even in the most narrowly defined assignments. The keys here are to offer choice whenever possible and to share the rationale with your students when it isn't. The next main element of engagement is to make the learning meaningful, or at least to help the learners make meaning from the material. Integrate authentic, real-world examples, especially if they connect to your learners' lives. So if you're going to write that math problem about someone buying 42 watermelons, you better be able to provide pictures. Bonus points if you can make these connections to their future professional lives. And bonus points if you can create a space where the students themselves can make these connections to their lives in order to apply the material as part of your course. Representation is the what of learning. What are the practical elements like the learning environment or how the information is presented? This does include ensuring representation from diverse communities, particularly to enhance cultural and linguistic connections. But it also covers how we are representing abstract concepts in concrete ways to our learners. Multiple intelligences, or the idea that people have innate good ways to learn, like being a visual or an audio learner, have been debunked. But multiple modalities, so learning through both visual and audio processes, are real and are valuable teaching tools. Vary the formats that you are using to include videos, short articles, longer publications, and whatever other media are relevant to your course. Just like with topic choice, this is not expected or even useful for every assignment. Choose the format or formats that are best suited to that material, those learning objectives, and that particular group of students. And then vary your presentation format throughout the course. For example, maybe instead of offering format choice on every single assignment, you are providing differentiated formats for 3 assignments over the course of your course. This is also where most of the things that we associate with accessibility are located. These slides use UCA Purple, and they've also been run through accessibility checkers to ensure that font size and color contrast make them easy to read. Finally, use techniques like chunking and scaffolding. Chunking breaks larger topics or assignments into smaller, more manageable pieces, which reduces load on the learner's brain and increases retention. It also gives your students small, quick wins throughout the project and provides opportunities for feedback and course correction before the final product is submitted. Scaffolding builds on what learners already know or have recently learned to provide support for the new material. Scaffolding can also be used in collaborative work, in which students with more knowledge or experience can tackle more advanced work while supporting learners who are newer to the topic. Third, action and expression are the how of learning. How are learners actually processing the information and then demonstrating their understanding? Again, while the three UDL guidelines do not build like steps, you can see how they complement and support each other, which also makes implementing them easier for you. Help build learner agency by providing format choices for the final product whenever possible. This also does not need to mean that every assignment can be done any way that a student wants. If the objective is to learn the elements of a persuasive paper, then an interpretive sculpture won't show mastery. This can also be varied across the term, so that one assignment might be a written paper, while the next is a short video. As noted in the text NeuroTeach, the ebook is linked in your guided notes, by the way, variation is the norm, not the exception. This is true with your students, and you can make it true for your formatting too. Finally, offer formative feedback opportunities. Summative assessments measure the learner's final accumulated learning on a topic, while formative assessments occur throughout the learning process and offer support, redirections, and the chance for deeper engagement. This helps develop learning as an ongoing, conscious act, and it reinforces the idea that each iteration of the student's work is a valuable output that contributes to this learning. If at this point you're feeling a little overwhelmed by all of this information, we can admit that this next link may not help. But thank you for trusting us and sticking with us, like your learners who potentially feel that they've been dropped down in the middle of a new video game level and haven't yet accessed the map. UDL does not lower the bars of academic success. It does not make things or make the content easier. It just makes accessing the content easier for everybody. Acknowledging the difficulty of the work allows your learners to know that they are not just struggling alone with the material, and when connected with chunked and scaffolded activities, can build trust between the learners that you are going to help them through. Past UDL guidelines are linked in the slides, in the guided notes, and on the Toolkit Google site. This PDF graphic organizer shows the breakdown of each of the three guidelines into three principles, which themselves are then broken down into specific practices organized around access, support, and executive function. This is your UDL menu, where you can peruse the ways to incorporate universal design principles and accessibility into your coursework, and select the options that work the best for your context at that point in time. Pictured on the slide is not the entire UDL graphic organizer. For presentation purposes, that gets very, very cluttered on a video recording. Instead, what we have is the header with the caption that the goal of UDL is learner agency that is purposeful and reflective, resourceful and authentic, strategic and action-oriented. There's also a link to a bigger article just about learner agency. When you think back to the one change that had a huge impact on your teaching, could it fall into one or more of these categories? Purposeful, reflective, etc.? You likely already align yourself, your teaching, and your relationship with your students along these lines. This image then includes three rectangles representing the green column, designing multiple means of engagement, the purple column, designing multiple means of representation, and the blue column, designing multiple means of action and expression. Designing for learning is action-oriented and purposeful. Each image also includes a gray sketch of a brain with various parts highlighted: the affective networks for engagement, the recognition networks for representation, and the strategic networks for action and expression. If throughout this slide you've been looking through the full UDL guidelines chart, let me just reiterate that these are starting points, prompts for you to build out as works best for you and your learners, and that these are multiple means that you will select from to make your course more accessible. Do not try to make every assignment fit every principal. This is a great point to pause and give you the chance to make meaning of all of the information you've just taken in. Reflect on your current practices. Which of the three guidelines do you already address most naturally in your teaching? Within the guidelines, which of the principles resonate with you the most? By yourself or with your partner or a small group, brainstorm a few times when a student has struggled in your class. What did that struggle look like? When or how did you know it was a struggle? Remember that all behavior is communication, so it may not be as simple as someone asking for help. What possible barriers made it difficult for them to access learning? What one or two ideas from the UDL principles might you have tried in that situation? If you are working with a group, this is a great place to pause the recording and take this discussion as deep as you need. Bringing UDL out of the abstract and reflective, let's look at the present and future in higher ed context. Specifically, what does this look like at UCA? First, we have the Office of Accessibility, Resources, and Services, or ORS, linked in the slides here. This is a great starting point for things like helping to make your course documents accessible for your learners in various ways. But this is just the starting point. Use this to help you build an accessible pathway that extends beyond documents and includes solutions as varied as each of our students. More than with elementary or secondary schools, your learners will be coming in with different backgrounds and are able to project this work onto their future selves in complex ways. UDL provides the tools to design with those variations in mind. And a quick plug. For more support and opportunities to develop your teaching excellence and academic leadership, apply for CETL's Teaching Excellence Institute in June. The link to CETL's site is in the slide. The 2026 application is not open as of the time of this recording, but you can see the info for the 2025 cohort and explore additional resources. So now we've investigated the reasons to use UDL strategies to develop greater learner agency and success. We've looked at the three guidelines and the corresponding principles. We've placed this in the UCA specific context. Now let's get down to business. On this slide, we have a graphic icon of a notebook in UCA purple and gray with a pencil in the act of writing. In your guided notes worksheet on page 3, you'll find a sample assignment for an inquiry project and showcase. We are going to tear this assignment down. So before we do, a few things to keep in mind. First, this is not anybody's real assignment, so don't go trying to find the professor who made it. In fact, Amber actually ran a sample assignment through the AI tool Claude with a prompt to make this bad. Second, this is a shame-free growth zone. You might recognize some components of the sample assignment as similar to some of your assignments, past or current. That's great. This does not mean that you have been doing things wrong or have been issuing bad assignments. It does mean that you're going to have some very quick wins for yourself and your students as you take what we work on here back to your own course. And it means that your lens is already shifting to a UDL perspective as you're starting to see these things. I don't teach the same way I did my first year over 20 years ago. I definitely don't still use the same assignments. You are allowed to grow in your journey as an instructor. Read through the provided assignment. Identify some barriers that could prevent students from succeeding. Brainstorm one redesign strategy using one of the UDL guidelines. At the in-person workshop, our groups worked together for about 8 minutes on this activity, and we recommend about 7 to 10 minutes if you're working with a partner or small group today. If you are working independently, please take about 5 to 8 minutes. This is not meant to be a comprehensive line-by-line dissection of the sample assignment. It is more important to spend time building the connections between the issues and the solution, which in this case are coming from the UDL graphic organizer. When you restart the recording, we'll be sharing a few of the issues that we discovered and some related strategies to address them. Welcome back. A quick note that the image on this page is a graphic of a stack of paper with purple outlines and check marks, suggesting a checklist or homework. Please share the ideas that you have developed in our Google Space forum. Just to identify a few of the issues and corresponding suggestions that we have for this assignment. Vague terms. There's no rubric. There's no real purpose to the assignment that is built in explicitly. There are heavy hitting curriculum assumptions without knowing the student's level of comfort or experience. There is a very short turnaround time with no checkpoint and no support mechanisms for how the group work will operate, let alone how to handle conflicts that arise. It is uncertain if all students have access to technology that will help them polish their final product for whatever polished looks like to this particular instructor. As we're going through each guideline, we can find some specific ways to address some of these issues. For engagement, we could optimize choice and autonomy by providing options for the topic or format. We could clarify the meaning and purpose of the goals of this assignment. For representation, it is vital that we clarify vocabulary. What do we mean by good? What do we mean by professional? We also should represent diverse perspectives and identities in authentic ways. It is great that this assignment asks students to look at the community issue from multiple perspectives. But that doesn't necessarily guide students on how to understand those perspectives with empathy or how to ensure that they have got authentic representation from those voices coming in. For action and expression, we could optimize access to accessible materials and resources. It's also fantastic that this instructor has offered for the students to use whatever manner of presentation works best for them. It's also clear, however, that this professor or instructor puts a lot of emphasis on the look of the final product. And you could imagine being a student who has never used slides before or who knows that they prefer making perhaps a poster while others are going to be making fancy slide presentations, being a little bit nervous about their choice and second guessing themselves. The key here with action and expression is optimizing that access to these materials and resources. The instructor should provide ways for students to be able to use various presentation platforms and also provide the resources for learning how to use them effectively. Additionally, the instructor needs to enhance their capacity for monitoring progress. There is just 1 week from the issuing of this assignment to the time that a polished final product is due. This is a very rushed timeline, and there is no way in the middle for students to check in and make sure that they are meeting the instructor's expectations or getting any sort of help. These were just a few of the issues and some corresponding suggestions that we came up with. Did you come up with other strategies for these same issues? Or what additional issues and strategies did you look at? Please share those with us. We also invite you to debrief and reflect on the activity itself. More than just recapping the issues that you found and which strategies you chose, what would you like to examine about the process? Think about questions like, did you find yourself weighing a few different options? How did you choose then? Did you choose any combinations of practices instead of just one? How did this activity make you think about your own assignments? To continue building your own neural pathways, we want to extend on the previous two activities and apply the UDL guidelines to your professional context. In your guided notes on page 4, you will find a Monday someday chart. The guiding idea here is to think about small, meaningful changes we can implement almost immediately. That's the Monday side of the chart. And then also lay the groundwork for a medium-term change that you can implement for your next teaching semester, the Sunday side. Even if you are in a pair or small group, you'll want to start this activity individually as you think about your own courses. You're going to start by looking at the Monday side, choosing just one UDL principle, brainstorm one small intentional change that you can implement starting next week, or at this point in the semester, starting at the beginning of your next semester. Make a plan to implement it, including identifying barriers and designing for all learners. And check in with an accountability buddy at the end of next week. For the someday side of the chart, choose a second UDL principle. Brainstorm one larger change that you could include in your planning or course design for the next semester you're teaching. Make a plan to implement it, including identifying barriers and designing for all learners. And bonus points if you follow up with one of us next semester and share the change. Please pause the recording and take 3 to 5 minutes to add your ideas to each section of your Monday someday chart. And welcome back for a final time. Collaboration goes beyond putting our heads together to solve a problem directly in front of us. Cheerleading and feedback both make us and our work better. As we noted, check in with an accountability buddy and bonus points if you follow up with one of us. We want to know how your change is going, and we want to be able to support you in this as well. The image on this slide is the stack of papers again, because this is the next reflection. So we're making that visual connection for the learners. At this point, think about how charged your cognitive battery is. Some of us are going to be motivated and ready to keep going. Some of us are going to be really excited about the information, but also needing time to reflect and work through these processes. What will serve you best in this moment? Spending a little more time on a final reflection and closing that loop, or ending the workshop with the commitment you made to your Monday plan and taking a break. Please close this session with the option that best meets your needs. We have absolutely loved creating this workshop, and we appreciate your interest in and commitment to creating a more intentional, accessible learning community. We would love to continue the conversation at any time, and we are excited by the curiosity inherent in questions. So please reach out. Thank you and take care.